Hi, I'm Erin Myers, brand educator with Kenra Professional. Join me today for Cinnamon Swirl, this dimensional all-over color with beautiful ribboned highlights. Let's get into it. So sectioning for this look is going to start with a top section in a teardrop shape, just going to occipital. And then from behind ear to ear, we're going to take a horizontal zigzag section, and that will create both our nape section and our center section. Our first formulation that we're going to be using is 4B in our permanent shades, and I'm mixing that with 10 volume to get optimal deposit. So to start, I'm going to be applying that 4B roots to ends in the nape section. I chose 4B today because I really love the chocolatey undertones that B gives us. It's going to both deepen the shade that she already has and give a beautiful, warm, chocolatey reflection. By applying roots to ends in this underneath section, it's gonna also just give a ton of depth for underneath. The reason I chose to do her section with a zigzag parting is to really make sure that if she were to wear her hair maybe half up or twisted, that she doesn't have a straight, harsh line where we're gonna be altering different shades. It's going to give a really soft blend, so you won't see a start and a finish to where we're gonna be putting in those highlights in just a few minutes. Since we are doing the 4B in the nape section roots to ends, that's why I'm starting down here, just because I'm gonna be able to apply it, clip it away, and keep my sections really clean. We are actually going to be using this same exact formulation for the other two sections, but just applying to about 1 to 3 inches down from the scalp. So I finished the application of the nape section, roots to ends, and clipped it out of the way. Now I'm gonna be going in with the exact same formula, that 4B and 10 volume, on both the center section and that top teardrop section, but I'm only pulling that color between 1 and 3 inches down. This center section is where we're going to be putting in those swirl highlights. So that can really help to determine how deep down the hair strand you want to take this base color, because we're going to be marrying it into the highlights. So do you want a lot of beautiful rooted brunette, or do you want those highlights to go closer up to the scalp? So that can help you to determine how far down you apply in this center section. Now, my model today does have just a really small amount of gray hair, really, probably less than 25%. So that is why I'm going in with permanent for this base color. We want to make sure that she is getting those grays covered, blended in beautifully, and can have nice, easy maintenance for after her appointment today. You can either outline your sections at the very beginning or as you go. I always recommend outlining your sections, whether it's at the beginning or as you go, whatever you're more comfortable with, so that you can keep everything neat and clean and really be able to locate your sections. You don't want to get lost throughout any type of color application. Okay, so her foundation color is applied just about 1 to 2 inches down from that root in this middle section. Now, we're not done with this middle section. We're coming back to it and applying some amazing highlights, but I want to make sure that I get that root color on our teardrop section on the top as well. So I'm just going to loosely clip this away. I'm not trying to press color into those mids and ends, just to keep things clean. And again, I'm just applying that same 4B and 10 volume to the roots here in the teardrop section. Now, if you want to have a really beautiful dark veil, this is where you can drag a little bit more of that 4B deeper down to give more darkness around the face. When we get to this next section in completion, I'll show you some other options for extra dimension. Okay, so I have her foundation color applied just to that root area of the teardrop, and I've clipped it away because we'll do more there later as well. So now I'm working my way back to this center section. Again, that 4B is applied just at the root, and this is where we're going to bring in that swirl effect for our look. I'm going to be going in using vertical placement with foils and our brand new Creme Lightener. So what vertical foils are going to accomplish are these beautiful ribbons of brightness and pop, and then that darker teardrop shape on the top will be a veil over the top of it. So something to really take into consideration before you figure out where you want to put your first foil is their density. My model has fine hair, and I want to make sure that when she pulls her hair back that she's got nice coverage of that first highlight. So I'm going to leave a good 1 inch or so out and leave this as that darker shade. So I'm going to go in, again, vertical placement is going to give us those beautiful ribbons. I'm going to start here with a slice, and again using our Creme Lightener and 20 volume. As I place this foil, you can see that I am marrying our 4B base here into our lightener. That's going to give a beautiful blend. Every hair on her head is getting colored today, so that is a beautiful way to make sure our shades really complement each other and that we're not leaving any hair untouched. So that was a slice, and I'm going to be working my way around the head, alternating slices and thick weaves, but leaving that subsection of that natural hair in between. And again, this can vary based on your client's density. She's pretty fine, so I'm going to leave maybe like 1/2 inch subsections in between those foils. This is also totally customizable. You can choose to do all slices, you can choose to do a finer weave. That will really give you different types of results with any application, so it's really versatile. Marrying that foundation color to our lightener. I love that these vertical placements kind of mimic that 90s chunky highlight in a way, but without having to see the grow out from a chunky highlight. So you might remember, if you've been around the industry for a while, you might remember those 2003, 2004 chunky highlights that were so popular, but man, the grow out on them was really harsh. So by doing this more bold, piecey highlight look underneath a veil of color, it's going to give them that bold dimension through those mids and ends without having to see that new growth. We're also diminishing that harsh new growth by marrying it here into that foundation color. So my last one was a slice. So my next one's going to be that chunky weave. Another pro tip that I did before I started applying, always make sure when you're sectioning this teardrop, give some lax in the hair to make sure they don't have a harsh cowlick that might swirl and leave an opening in the back. You want to make sure that that veil will cover your highlights at the top up here, where many people have a swirl. So the reason that I chose Creme Lightener today is, again, I know I said it before, she has finer textured hair. We want to make sure that we are taking really great care of our fine textured. We know that it can get damaged easier, and this Creme Lightener has a marula and argan oil base, It really helps to protect the hair during the lightening process. It also gives it this really, really great texture. I was just gonna say creamy texture, but that's obvious because it's a cream lightener, right? But it just spreads so well and it doesn't dry the hair out. So I'm just going to continue working through this center section, alternating slices and thick weaves, and making sure that I marry and blend that foundation color to my cream lightener for a beautiful, soft blend of those two shades. And I'm just gonna continue and finish up this section. Okay, so all of her vertical foils are placed. Again, this is going to give that beautiful ribboned highlight. And now we're going to go through and complete the all over color. And this is where you get to throw in some creative freedom. Now, if you love that 4B that I was utilizing for that base color, pull it through roots to ends on the rest of the hair. And then you'll just have those two shades of the highlight and the base color. But like I said, I like some creative freedom. So I'm going to be adding in a secondary all over color. So my formulation for my secondary shade is equal parts 5RB and 6RR in our Demi line. I'm going to be going through these subsections that are left out between the foils, and I'll pull that 4B all the way through on some. I'll pull that secondary shade all the way through, and some you can even color melt from that darker shade to that lighter shade. So again, creative freedom, have fun with this part. I really like to, just a pro tip, use formulations that are only like maybe 1 to 2 levels off from one another. It'll keep it really deep and dimensional, but still give something for the eye to grab onto. I spoke earlier about keeping her hairline really natural looking, so I am going to be pulling that 4B all the way through roots to ends on those sections closest to her hairline. And now you can see, I'll show you on this one, I'm gonna color melt this from that 4B to our secondary, more auburny red shade. So I'm just bringing that 4B down a few more inches, maybe about halfway. I'm gonna give a quick wipe of my gloves and melt that to our secondary shade to give a beautiful dimensional pop. I like to use my index and middle finger where the two shades come together and just make a mix nice and well. So I'm going to just continue working around the head, alternating, pulling that 4B all the way through and melting other sections into that secondary reddish tone, and that will complete that center application. All right, so the last application part is this top teardrop. So I'm also going to be alternating my shades, pulling through both that 4B and that combination of 5RB, 6RR for beautiful dimension. And one pro tip I like to use also is to take zigzag sections here too. So this is my 4B, you can just go through, and the reality, this application up here with these zigzags, I'm not doing anything like super precise. I want it to be really dimensional and kind of lived in and not necessarily have straight lines of those two different shades. So get creative, use your zigzags, maybe use rounded partings, things that will look really interesting on the head compared to just good old straight lines. So this one, I'm dragging that darker shade just a few inches lower, and now I'm going to swap over to my secondary shade and melt it in. On the parts that you decide to do melting on, you can really choose how high up on the hair strand in each section that you want that melt to start. And I actually recommend varying it, so maybe starting some higher up and starting some maybe center or way down below. That's going to make it really interesting to the eye. And again, negate any like straight, harsh lines of transition between your two shades. So my model today does wear a forward fringe, and I want to make sure that that fringe that lays over her forehead is a cohesive shade. So I'm going to, again, zigzag part. I'm going to make sure that I have all of her fringe in this section here. I can actually see our shorter pieces here and a few longer ones behind it. I'm going to pull our darker shade, our 4B, roots to ends through here because I want to make sure that, again, it has that cohesive look, roots to ends, for the hair that's going to be falling right on her forehead. And now I'm just going to continue alternating those really organic sections between our foundation and our secondary shade until the top of the teardrop here is completely applied. So her application is done, and one pro tip I wanted to touch on is always make sure that you're aware of where your guest parts their hair. So because I was doing those really organic zigzag sections, alternating two shades, I want to make sure that that top section that is going to be straddling over her part is going to match on either side of her head. So I did do that 4B roots to ends, hovering over her part line to make sure she has symmetry there, but then she'll have all that creative pops of shades and different dimension throughout those mids. So she's gonna process for 20 minutes and then we'll be back to show you our glossing. Okay, so she is rinsed from her color application, and I wanted to show you guys the raw lift that we got from that Creme Lightener in 20 volume. Oftentimes, stylists jump to tone out the warm, tone out the warm, tone out the warm. Here's the thing, that warm is actually going to help us, not hurt us, on our final gloss application. So when you have a warm goal, embrace the warm of that natural raw lift because it's actually going to help you out. So now I have resectioned her just to remove the veil area from that teardrop so that we can see exactly where we are applying that final gloss onto our highlighted ribbons. My formulation today for our gloss is 3/4 8GB and 1/4 6RR in Demi with 9 volume. And I brought her back to the chair, and I've already applied our porosity equalizing spray. I applied it first, it helps as a detangler, and it's going to even out that canvas, so that way when I apply that toner, everything just grabs evenly. So now I'm just going to apply that gloss all over to where her highlighted section was through that center. Now, although our demis can absolutely be applied with a bottle, I really prefer to bring my client back to the chair, spray that porosity equalizing spray, detangle them, and apply with a bowl and brush to make sure you're getting really great saturation. Remember, if there's a tangle in the hair that is getting skipped over from your hairbrush, that gloss may not grab onto where you actually put it if there's a tangle in the hair. So take the extra time, bring them back to the chair, get them detangled, and get optimal saturation with your final gloss. I started in the center and I'm just working around one side of her head, applying the gloss everywhere where those highlights are. And once I'm done with this side, I will spin her around and apply the exact same thing over her highlights on the other side of the head. We will process our demi for 15 minutes. Demis can be processed anywhere up to 25, but for today's deposit, 15 minutes will do the trick. So this is our final look for our cinnamon swirl, this dimensional all over color with those beautiful pops of ribboned highlights. So to recap, we parted her into 3 sections. We had that beautiful veil on top in that teardrop shape, and that's acting as that veil over those chunkier highlights. And with those vertical placed foils, you're going to get this beautiful dimension, and she's not gonna have to see that grow out underneath. And then utilizing that zigzag sectioning on the underneath of the nape, you get this beautiful blend. I hope you enjoyed these tips and tricks for a beautiful dimensional all over color with highlights. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this to Kenra Professional's YouTube channel, and I'll see you on the next one.